Greetings and welcome to Behind the Music, our series of pre-concert chats with key performers in our 2020-21 season. My name's Andrew Chung. I am Artistic Producer of London Symphonia. And joining me today are two soloists for our upcoming concert, The Seasons. On October 3rd, this will be live streamed from Metropolitan United Church in London, Ontario. Greetings, Joseph Lanza, and greetings, Scott St. John.
Great.
Good morning.
For having me.
So just to introduce you two, I'm just going to read a little bit of your histories. Joseph Lanza has been concertmaster of London Symphonia and its predecessor for 34 years, having appeared as soloist and leader in every musical genre. Joe is also a busy freelance violinist, and his performances have taken him across the world, notably touring with Tafelmusik Baroque Orchestra. He has a passion for early music of the 17th and 18th centuries, and he is a coordinator and lecturer of the Early Music Studio at Western University. Violinist Scott St. John is the director of chamber music at the Colburn School in Los Angeles. He leads the chamber music programs in the Colburn School's Conservatory of Music and Pre-College Music Academy. Scott is concertmaster of the innovative Rocco Chamber Orchestra in Houston, Texas, and a frequent participant in the Marlborough Music Festival in Vermont. Originally born in London, he completed studies at the famed Curtis Institute in Philadelphia and has performed all around the world. He's received an Avery Fisher Career Grant, and won a Juno Award for a recording of Mozart with his sister, Lara St. John. Scott has been associate professor at the University of Toronto and artist in residence at Stanford University as part of Canada's most famous string quartet, the St. Lawrence String Quartet. Welcome to you both.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
So I only learned just yesterday that you two have known each other for a long time and your paths have crossed both in the US and Canada. Can you take me through some of these various connections?
Who's going to go first?
No, you could start.
Well, I actually met Scott in 1984 and Lara, but they didn't meet me. They were maybe 13 or 14 years old, and they had won a concerto competition to play on a youth concert with the Philadelphia Orchestra. And back in those days, I used to substitute regularly as an extra musician in the Philadelphia Orchestra. And it's funny because, Scott, didn't you tell me that you guys actually came to Philadelphia in 1984?
Yeah, it's almost like we switched places at that point because we moved from London to Philadelphia so that I could start at Curtis. And I gather that's when you moved to Canada, or shortly around the time that you moved to Canada.
I won a job in Thunder Bay in December and started in January of 1985. And, you know, the funny thing was the performance that you and Lara did that summer must have really stuck in my mind, because when I came to London, of course, I heard about the famous Scott and Lara St. John, and I thought to myself, oh yeah, I know them. I heard them. They were just outstanding, right? And then a few years went by, and Orchestra London in 1990 put on a program called Dueling Violins. And that was the year that both Scott and I were lent Stradivariuses to play on.
Right.
Mine was by a private donor, and I think yours was the Canada Council for the Arts, right, Scott?
That's right. Yeah, it was called the Windsor Weinstein Stradivarius. Yeah.
So, yeah, we were featured on that program. We played some Mozart together.
We played some Mozart together. And I recall that we also ran into each other at numerous other opportunities after that, connected with Orchestra London. And most recently was that chamber music concert that we did a couple of years ago, also with Andrew. So the three of us were all involved, and that was a lot of fun, I think. I know I enjoyed that experience.
Yeah, that was part of the Serenata music series and at Wolf Hall, and that was great, very memorable, lots of fun.
Yep.
We had Graham Lord as clarinet in that concert. Oh, fantastic!
So it is kind of cool that Joe and I have really almost at least for me, it's almost my whole lifetime that I've known Joe. So it's
Yeah.
That's
And then this concert brings you two together in soloist roles. We're so lucky to have you both living in London. It's kind of amazing. So, I was thinking, living in London, a mid-sized Canadian city, Joe, you've lived here for 34 years, and Scott, you've been back in London now for 7 years. Um, as an artist, what's it like living in London as your base?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's funny that when you're a kid and you grow up, and I think I had these visions of I was gonna live in New York forever, or I think I had that idea as a teenager, especially. But as you become a parent and certain priorities change in your life, my wife Sharon and I, we started actively looking for reasons to get back to Canada. At that time, we were living in Northern California, and while everybody's like, oh, Northern California is so beautiful. Why would you move back to frigid London? Because actually, the winter that we did move back was that incredibly cold winter where the snow was on the ground, from November until April and that kind of thing. And
Right.
um,
Mm.
and there were a whole bunch of reasons though that it made sense. I mean, it was a family decision, and it was also realizing that London has so much to offer that I don't think I properly appreciated when I was a kid. And so we've really, found it terrific to be back in London. It's great for my daughter. Of course, my wife has a terrific job at Western, where she worked with Joe all the time, and and it's a good base. I can go and do my trips now and then, and it's always nice to come back to our beautiful house here in London.
So it's still artistically rewarding, but you don't have to get all of that reward within London. You still have the opportunity to travel abroad, and that's the nature of the industry, right? It's
That's right. Yep,
great.
exactly.
Yeah.
So Joe, what about from your perspective? Living in London for such a long time, and how things have changed, and what London provides you as an artist.
Well, it's the experience the same but different. Um, Growing up in Philadelphia, I came from a big musical family. Philadelphia has a very rich musical scene and wonderful traditions. And I didn't expect to leave. But at a certain point, I felt like it would be a good idea to get away for a while and to get some experience. Um, and I did. It was a kind of circuitous path to London. First Knoxville, Tennessee, and then Thunder Bay. Uh, Imagine traveling. Speaking of
Mm.
coming back to Canada, it was 15 degrees in Tennessee in January, the day I left. And when I got to Thunder Bay, it was minus 25 and there was 3 feet of snow on the ground.
Oh,
Yeah.
But I was only 24 years old, and I instantly, first of all, it's really beautiful there. I really enjoyed my experience there, and little by little, looking around as a naive American who didn't know very much about other places and that other countries could be great too. I realized that this place really agreed with me. Then 3 years later, I won the job in London, and I liked that even better. And then it became a family thing. I met Jennifer, my wife, who plays in the orchestra a few years later. We had our daughter, Heather, and this just seemed like a really good place to raise a family, and it has been.
hmm
So,
and,
and
and
I,
it,
yeah, I also take trips from time to time to go and play other places, but yeah, it's on balance, it's worked.
fantastic. And it helps that we have such a great faculty of music here, right in London, right? I mean, at Western, Don Wright faculty, and you teach early music there, and that's great, right? It's another piece of the puzzle of an artist's career, a musician's career. Um,
Yes.
Now, Scott, so you right now, at this snapshot in time, you're using London as a base, and you have two other significant musical engagements in the U.S. Can you tell me about teaching in Los Angeles at Colburn and during COVID, and also about your Rocco group in Houston?
Yeah, sure. Um, yeah, so I guess you could say my real job at the moment is teaching at the Colburn School in Los Angeles, And the Colburn School is, is kind of an amazing full scholarship place where they have terrific students, and I've actually had a great time being involved there. Of course, we're faced with the challenges that many music schools have at the moment during these times. And I'm the chamber music guy, and chamber music is even more of a disaster than any other segment, I think, of the music world at the moment. Well, I mean, orchestra is also difficult. But yeah, chamber music, so we've had to kind of reinvent, individualized approaches to chamber music, and it's been a challenge, not always incredibly rewarding to be on Zoom all the time, but you get used to it, and it is great to see the students adapting to these situations. And then the orchestra that I play with in Houston, called Rocco, they're a lot of fun. I enjoy that because we do a lot of contemporary music, which I love, and actually we do a fair bit of conductorless there as well, and that might be something that we're talking about in a minute. But Houston is also a crazy place in some ways, and I find it amazing that there is such a vibrant scene, and that Rocco thrives as a kind of small group, and they bring in all sorts of people for this group, and you realize that the power of the donor in Texas is very strong.
So it allows this group to do a lot of touring. Do I have that right, or is it more?
No, mainly no, they don't tour at all actually, but they do a huge amount of commissioning. Rocco has commissioned 100 new works over the past 10 years.
Well, yeah, and my experience in the U.S. is that the donor aspect of the performing arts, it's a very, very big piece of the puzzle because government support for the arts is much, much more limited
That's
in
right.
the U.S.
Yeah, it's a different formula altogether, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
True.
So let's dive into the music a little bit. So this concert is a bit unusual, right? We're conductorless, but there are two soloists. So can you describe for our audience why we're doing it this way? How about you, Joe?
Well, I have to say that when I started to perform with Tafa Music, which was about 1996, that was very eye-opening for me. Some of the things that I did there were what they have been with conductor because they're classical, so they're larger. But I've also done a lot of Baroque things there that had no conductor, and I realized that the sort of ethos of that orchestra and its way of going about things, I just found it extremely attractive because it's like chamber music on a larger scale, basically. And ever since it's changed me in terms of the ethic of being in an orchestra, especially a small orchestra like ours. So that is what we're going to be doing. And London Symphonia is no stranger to this. We've done a lot of programs like this over the years. This orchestra and the predecessor ensemble had the conductorless dimension of programming as a regular feature. So I'm very happy to continue that. But this program is a bit unique, not only in the sense that you get 2 Four Seasons for the price of one, but 2 soloists, 2 different violin soloist leaders. I don't think that happens so often, but I think it's kind of fun. It's kind of a cool thing. So I think it's really, really good for the orchestra, and continues right along a path that we believe in London Symphonia, I think.
So
Yeah.
so Scott, like from your perspective, when you do conductorless concerts like this, what do you do differently with the violin itself? Like, how do you demonstrate or show the beat, or what's your approach?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I mean, I 100% agree with Joe that there's a wonderful sense of freedom in doing the conductorless. That you don't have to feel like you're kind of at the mercy of the person with the baton. And even though they can be very helpful, it is fun to sort of maybe this is the wrong analogy, but kind of like go without the seatbelt for a while, and kind of um, get that enthusiasm, and I think getting back to your question, Andrew, I think it forces you to, as the concertmaster or leader, it forces you to show things as clearly as you possibly can, and it also means that you have to play a little bit of the role of the conductor in listening capacity. You have to be very aware of every other section of the orchestra, especially the basses and cellos, because I think we all know that we're all listening to those when we're in the orchestra, for both for rhythm and for pitch, and so I think that can be a challenge. I think when I've had a conductorless program to prepare, you always feel like you really need to know the score. You can't just kind of ride on the conductor's knowledge to help you along. And so it's a really good challenge, and one that I've always enjoyed. And like Joe said, I think it's also really good. Everybody feels like they're very invested in the concert from from all over the orchestra.
Yeah, it raises the responsibility level too for the other principal players, and well, everyone, right, has to have a very integrated approach for it to be impactful. Vivaldi in this program comes first, so it's about 40 minutes to get through those 4 seasons, and I think the Piazzolla is about 25 minutes, if I'm right.
Correct.
On that. So Vivaldi's first. This piece really needs no introduction, and there are a lot of ways to approach it. But Joe, can you tell us briefly, for a complete newcomer to Vivaldi's 4 seasons, what's so exciting? Why is this piece so enduring?
Well, I think with Vivaldi, there's one dimension that always stands out. There is a tremendous rhythmic energy in so much of Vivaldi's music, and I think it catches people. And it's why his music has been enduring, not just the 4 seasons. But the 4 seasons is very special because it's so evocative. And actually, there are so many evocations in this piece. I had to make a list. So
Okay.
here you go.
We'll sit
First,
back a little bit and we'll just say
enough spring and summer birds to put a smile on any ornithologist's face. The next one, a slightly sensitive subject, a hunting expedition, complete with dogs, guns, yelling, shooting, and running prey.
Oh, yeah.
So, it was the 18th century, and nobody batted an eyelash to that, even though some people might find that a little strange. But I do want to say that at the end of that, it's treated all with good humor. It's as if the actors have staged a hunt for you, and then they bounce up and say, oh, everybody's okay. Nobody died. It's all cool, right? So what else? Thunder and lightning, nymphs and shepherds dancing to bagpipes, the story of a slightly neurotic herder who fears he's lost his herd, followed by the most amazing scorched earth passage for strings, because it's true, he did lose his herd.
Mm-hmm.
Drunken rowdiness, sleeping off drunken rowdiness. And then there are a couple of really funny things. Napping in a meadow with your viola playing dog.
That's my favorite spot.
That is mine too.
And being annoyed by flies and mosquitoes.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
So there's just a little bit of everything. Some of it's quite funny. All of it is really colorful, and it just invites imagination on both sides. For us as performers, how vividly can you bring that off? And I just want to mention also that in Venice in the 18th century, the idea that you would make your evocations in music as colorful as possible, almost bizarrely colorful, something that would really, really catch your attention. A little bit of shock value. So that is really part and parcel of Venetian music. It's just amazing, amazing stuff.
You're going to be on period instruments set up for this. You're going to be using gut strings as they would have back in Vivaldi's time.
I am, because first of all, with Vivaldi and with Venetian music, they played they played tuned up to modern pitch. People might notice that if they hear a recording of Tafel music or one of these other period orchestras, that the pitch might possibly seem low to them, and that's because it is. In the old days, tuning was lower, but not in Venice. So I feel perfectly at home playing this music right at the pitch that works for London Symphonia. And I am going to be playing on gut strings. You will see a few other Baroque bows in the orchestra because I know a few of our violinists own them. Andrew does, and a couple of others as well. But it'll be a mixture. And, you know, for me, I've spent so much time in the last 25 years thinking about going back and forth and what are like the key issues and how do you translate it. So I'm very happy to talk to our musicians, which we've done so many times over the last 15, 20 years about, okay, well, if you have your modern instrument and you have your modern bow, it's still quite possible to bring this as organically alive as a period instrument group. So how do we do that? So that's part of what we'll be exploring.
And then the second part of this program, so we've got the Piazzolla. I've got about just a few minutes left in our chat. We could go forever. This is fantastic. Okay, so Scott, Piazzolla. So Piazzolla, hugely influenced by the tango. So was this guy a songwriter? I mean, a lot of our audience might not be that familiar with him. Or was he a classical composer, or is this, you know, a roots folk thing, or what?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of all those things that you just mentioned, Andrew. I mean, Piazzolla kind of reinvented the tango, kind of made it a synthesis of that dance, you know, folk tradition, but combined it with classical tradition. And he wrote these seasons actually with no connection to the Vivaldi at all. He originally wrote them separately. He wrote them for his own tango group, which was where he would play generally the accordion, or what's called the bandoneon. But there was a violinist, electric guitar, piano, and bass in his quintet. And so over a period of years, he wrote these various seasons. And it was actually people outside of Argentina that kind of thought, ooh, this is cool, you know, two different seasons, let's put them together on a program. And it became such a common thing to do that Gidon Kremer, famous violinist, collaborated with a Russian composer, Leonid Desyatnikov, I've been practicing how to say that name, to kind of make a reconcept version of these Piazzolla seasons with ways that actually acknowledge and quote from the Vivaldi. And so that's what makes it now really interesting to do it in this version. And he puts in, you know, little cadenzas that are very much in style for Piazzolla, but, you know, may not be exactly what Piazzolla intended. So it's kind of it's an interesting meld of these two ideas and very different styles. And I think that's part of what makes it work so well, is that, you know, you have this kind of layering of styles. And the other thing I just wanted to point out, which I think is kind of interesting, is that, you know, the arranger, now I can't say it anymore. Desyatnikov kind of purposely associated the Piazzolla Southern Hemisphere seasons with those that would be occurring simultaneously in Vivaldi's Italy. So, for instance, in January it's summer in Argentina, while it's winter in Italy. So that's why, you know, you don't get the quote that you necessarily expect when you're playing the Piazzolla seasons. Anyway, it's a lot of fun to play. It's a very, you know, very kind of slidey and, you know, very folky piece. A lot of great fun for me, and, you know, and actually huge challenge for a lot. There's huge amounts of solos in the orchestra as well. So it should be a lot of fun.
I'm so looking forward to rehearsing that this week with you all. I think that's about time for today. So thank you for joining us. You know, this concert will be rising up to the COVID challenge. We'll be spacing the orchestra a little bit differently. It's live streamed. We may have a small live in-person audience. Wait and see still. You know, but we really want that live audience component. I mean, just to get a little bit of feedback, it means so much rather than ending a piece and ending in silence. So please do join us October 3rd. This is live streamed from Metropolitan United Church. Check our website, www.londonsymphonia.ca. And thank you again, Scott and Joe.
A pleasure.
Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you. See you soon.